Hello, I'm Matt Landers with Covalence, and in this video we're going to talk about adding a MySQL database to your project. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use our barebones boilerplate. So this is just the starter template that has a build process already built in for you. It's easier just to start from something like this than building your whole build process out, but you can definitely do that. I'm going to start from this project. So I'm going to go ahead and clone this. And when I clone this, it's going to create a directory for me. I want to go ahead and rename that directory. I'm going to go do that real quick. And I'm just going to name it my MySQL example. You can't see this right now, but it's happening. All right, so I'm going to go to MySQL example. All right, now the first thing that I need to do whenever I clone this repository is I need to remove git from it. So I'm just going to say rm-rf.git. And now there's no, like if I say git status, there's no git in here. So now I can hook it up to my own repo. So let's go ahead and do code dot and get a VS Code window up. See what we have. So this is just our boilerplate. It doesn't have everything in it that we need just yet because we want to use MySQL. So I'm going to go ahead and npm install MySQL and the typings for MySQL, which is @types/MySQL. Now those are for TypeScript because this project uses TypeScript. We want to have our types so we get that strong typing whenever we're trying to use MySQL. So I'm going to install that. That'll add that to my package.json here. And we're going to go ahead and once that's installed, get a server running. So I'm going to just say npm run dev and make sure that everything's good to go here. So localhost 3000, and there we go. We've got our server up. We know that everything's working. You want to do that first so that you don't make sure you're not running into any issues that you didn't cause. All right. So what we're going to do is we need to add MySQL to our project, get a API working that goes and gets some data for us. So in this example, we're just going to go to a database that I already have, and it's a blog database, and I have a table called blogs in it. So I can show you. So I can select from blogs. And then it's got a few blogs in here. We're going to pull those back and show them in our React app that's part of this project. Also, if you're on MySQL 8 and using Node, you might have to do this if you get an authentication error. This is for later. This should be in the documentation from when you were working through the database stuff, but just want to make sure it's here too in case you're following along and trying to do this yourself. You are going to have to do this. It's just because Node doesn't support the new authentication that's in MySQL 8 yet, as of this video anyways. It may work without it by the time you see this. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to review this project. We have server routes on our server side. And then we have our client side, which is just a very, very simple React app that does basically nothing at this point. We have one route in here already that's just a sample route for Hello World, which we're not going to use anymore. But let's go ahead and start to mess with the server side and get the app up and running. So the first thing that we want to do is create a folder. And the first thing that I usually do is create my config. And this is important to understand right off the bat is that we don't want to check in our passwords and stuff. So we need to ignore our config that has our passwords in it. We need to ignore it so that we're not checking those in. Because imagine that you put a password in a file, you check it into GitHub, and now the world has it to see all your password information. Do not do this. So we're going to ignore the config directory for now. There are lots of ways that you can manage this. For now, we're just going to ignore this config directory in our git ignore. So we're going to come in here and get a source server/config. That way we're not tracking that folder at all. We can put whatever we want in there, and it's not going to be a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and git init this because you're going to want to do that and have git working. And I'm going to go ahead and commit this as a initial project. So I'm going to do git add and git commit -m initial project. All right. So I've done that. You'll notice the client, the config folder wasn't part of that commit. See how it's grayed out. But we're also going to add a file in here, just called index.ts, and we're just going to export default a config. Now the thing that we need to export is our MySQL connection information. So I'm going to put my host in here, which is localhost. I'm going to put my port, which is 3306. I'm going to put my user, which is blog. And I'm going to put my database, which is blog. And my password. This is what you wouldn't want to put anywhere, right? Well, mine's blah blah, so now you know. All right, so this is my config. I put this in this file. I'm going to import it whenever I create the connection to MySQL. So let's go ahead and create another folder. This is just the way that I typically set it up. This is not something you have to do it this way, but you want to create something that makes sense to you on how you're going to separate your database calls and things from your routes and everything else. I usually create a DB folder and then add like an index.ts in here, and then I'll usually add a new file for each table that I'm going to work with, so like blog. In my index, I'm going to import MySQL from MySQL, and I should have to do import star as MySQL, and then we're going to go ahead and create our connection. So we also need our config. So we're going to import config from /config. All right. So then we're going to say MySQL.create connection, and we're going to pass in our config that we put into our other file. So now we can create a connection with our config that's only locally, and we're not pushing that to GitHub whenever we push our changes. And then we need to save this. So const connection, and we're going to export this as well. And then we need to connect. So connection.connect, and we just want to know if there was an error, just so we console log that out, so that while we're debugging, we'll know if something went wrong with our connection. And we'll just console that out. All right. So now we should have a connection here. We can go whenever we save and see what happens. So it rebuilt, it looks like, and everything is fine. It actually connected here. Didn't have any error outputted. You can check this as you go too to make sure you're not running into issues and figure out where those are going to be. So now let's go to our blog, and we're going to import connection from the index. And then we're going to be able to make some queries from this. So the thing that we want to export here, what I usually do, or what's a practice you could do, you could export const all. So this is a function. I'm going to make it an async function. And this is just going to return all of the blog posts. And then what I'll usually do here too is have an export default and put whatever functions that I have here where you can pull them all in at once. So I might have an insert, delete, search. There might be a bunch of functions related to the blog table that I want to export. And so that's why you can somebody would either be able to go grab just the one that they want or all of them at once. All right. So let's go ahead and make this call. Now the way MySQL works is that it works with callbacks. So we want to make sure that we're handling that and we're not forcing ourselves to use callbacks, because that's an old school practice. So I made this an async function, and what we want to do is we want to return a promise. So we're going to return a new promise, and a promise takes a resolve and reject function. And then if the database call produces an error, we're going to call the reject. Otherwise, we're going to call resolve. So what we'll do is we need to import, or we need to do a query here. So we're going to do connection.query, and we're going to do select star from blogs. think it's blogs. Let me check. It is blogs. All right, so select star from blogs, and then it has a callback, and it's going to give us an error or the results. And here we want to say if there is an error, which we want to check that, then we want to exit this callback and reject this promise. Otherwise, we just want to resolve it with the results. So this is very simple. This is all we have to do. This is just a standard check that we're going to do every time. And put our semicolons in here, make it nice and pretty. All right, so this should work. This should make a query, call blogs, and then return the result. Now, this isn't being called from anywhere yet, so we want to call it from our route. So let's go to our routes. We're going to add a new route. We'll do it at /API/blogs. And I'm going to make this an async function, and you'll see why here in a second. And what we're going to do is we're going to import our database here. Well, on the index, first of all, I want to export something here as well. I'll show you. So I'm going to import blog from blog. Probably should have renamed this to blogs. But I'm going to name, okay, and that pasted it for me automatically. Cool. All right, then I'll do an export default here, and I'm going to put blogs as part of that. All right. So every table that I have, I'll import into index, and then I will export them. It's just an easy way, if you have a bunch of tables, not have to go get all these different tables. So now what I can do is I can say import db from /db, and when I go here and start to use it, I'll see that I have blogs.all. Now that's pretty cool. Now we have this cool database pattern that we're using. So what I want to do is I want to get the blogs, and I'm going to await the call to db.blogs.all. Because I'm using TypeScript and everything, this IntelliSense is really good. It's giving me everything that I need, making sure that it's all working the way that I expect. Then I'm going to do response.json blogs. And we really should wrap this in a try as well, so that if there is an error, we can let the API know that, so we can catch our error here. And then we can do response.sendStatus 500, letting whoever's using this to know that, hey, there was an error. But we don't want to show them the error, but we do want to console log it out so that we can see the error on our side. But let's say that it was like your password was wrong, or it could give them information about your table. So you don't want to send back your full error to the client, because then somebody could potentially use that to try to hack you. All right. Now when we go to API/blogs, we should get a list of all of our blogs. Now let's see, did this compile? It did compile. So we can go to our browser now here, and we can actually see if this is working. We can browse to localhost 3000/API/blogs. And look, here they all are. They're in JSON format and an array. We're good to go on that. So now let's go to our front end and call this API. So we're going to modify this. This is how it came. And what we're going to do is we're just going to change this to my blog. And then our state is no longer going to have a name in it. We're going to have blogs, and they're going to be an array. We'll do an array of any. You could define what each of these look like, but I'll just go ahead and do it just so that you can see what this would look like. It's going to be array, and they're going to have a title with string. That's all that we're going to worry about right now. We could put more in here, everything that comes back from our blogs, but just for the sake of this demo, I'm only going to put the title. Title is a property on our blog. If we look here, we have title, body, all those. We could put all of that here. So I could say title string, body string, etc. All right. And we could just define this as its own interface as well, which would be the better way to do it. But for the sake of this demo, let's just keep going here. This is giving us an error, so TypeScript is already saying, hey, now I know that there's an error. Let's go ahead and fix this. This is actually blogs. And here, instead of calling API/hello, we're going to call API/blogs. And we'll rename this. We can go to rename symbol here to blogs. Boom. All right, now what we want to do is we want to show these blogs. So we'll do a UL with a list group class on it. And then we want to map our blogs to some LI elements. So we'll say this.state.blogs.map. We're going to get each blog individually from this. And then we're going to return an LI with list-group-item. So this is just some bootstrap classes to make this look a little bit prettier. And then we'll do blog.title. And with lots of luck and hope, this will work. All right, so all we did was come in here. We just changed what we're calling. We're calling API/blogs now. We changed our interface a little bit, and we should be good. So let's go check it out. Come over to our project and run it. We're not okay. We have some errors here. Cannot read property map of null. Oh, I put null here. This should actually be an empty array. So there we go. Read your errors, figure out what it is, and refresh. And there we go. So now we have all of our blogs here coming through with some really cool names. The Codewalker Strikes Back. Love that one. Return to the Codewalker. Yeah, I came up with those myself. They're really cool. But with that, that's how we have added MySQL to our project. So let's do a really, really quick walkthrough of what we just did and make sure that you understand what's going on. So we added MySQL and the typings for MySQL, so at types/MySQL to our package.json and installed them in our node modules. And then we added a config file that we ignored in our gitignore. Make sure that you do that. You want to make sure that you ignore that config file so that you're not checking that into GitHub and letting the world know all of your passwords. Then in our config, we just have right now our MySQL, but we could put other things in here as we go too. So there may be other passwords and things to other services, like maybe our Stripe API key or Mailgun or something like that might go in here as well. But we don't want to ever check that in. And then we have other lectures and things that show you how to do these where it'll run in production. Because right now this wouldn't run in production without that file, but there are ways around that, and we'll go through that in other videos. I didn't want to go through that hassle right now. All right. And then we created a DB folder. We had to create a connection that all of our tables can use. So we didn't want to create a connection in every table that we might import here. So that's why we create this connection here. We go ahead and connect, get it hooked up as soon as the application starts. And then any of our tables can import that connection and use it. It's a MySQL connection. Now here we had to create a promise because MySQL uses callbacks, and we don't want to have to use callbacks everywhere. So if we create a promise here, now we've created an async pattern that we can use for the rest of the program. Here we just used our connection to make a query, and once it got the results, we resolved the promise and went back. We export all here, and we also import blogs here and export it as a default here. Now if we had other tables, we would add more tables here. And then our routes, we pull in our database from that index file, which has blogs on it, and we make that call using async and await. So this pattern makes it really easy to read and understand. We don't have to use .thens and chaining and all that. It's very simple and obvious how this is going to work. Then we just return those blogs, and then on our client, we changed our API to go to /API/blogs and mapped the result to a list of our blog titles. Very simple way to get this going, and now you can use this same pattern as you go on and do the future labs and work on your own personal blog, which will be really cool for you to deploy out there for the world to see. So hopefully that made sense. If not, ask a question at the bottom of this video and we will be sure to answer it. And we look forward to seeing your personal blogs come to life. So go check out the reference material and the lab, and happy coding.